Hey guys, we have a trio of IGN editors here to talk about the big news yesterday that Veronica Mars is returning via Kickstarter. I guess we should say not to talk about that in and of itself. There's a lot to talk about if you're a Veronica Mars fan, but more to the implications of what this means having a studio-owned project, in this case Warner Brothers, get kickstarted, which is definitely a first. So, people have some big feelings on this, some of them very negative, some very positive. And we're going to just kind of share our feelings right now on it. Let's start, Roth. What do you think about kickstarting Veronica Mars?
Well, full disclosure, I am a huge V Mars fan, so I've been wanting to see the return of Veronica Mars for a long time, like clearly a large portion of the fan base has been. So I am in full support of this project. As far as the implications for Kickstarter are concerned, I certainly understand some of the concerns, but I do think that some of the things that people are saying are a little bit hyperbolic. You know, why should I be funding charities for millionaires and these kinds of things? I think the legitimate end of the concern is that a feeling like it's something like Sundance, where Sundance was for independent filmmakers, and then it was kind of co-opted by studios, and so where did independent filmmakers have to go? Well, they had to start a new thing called Slamdance, and so on. Mm-hmm. But to me, Kickstarters for projects that can't get funded, and Veronica Mars tried and tried and tried for years. Warner Brothers wouldn't fund it. I feel like this works to fund the movie, yes, but also as a marketing campaign to show Warner Brothers the value of this property, which they didn't previously see, despite the fan base.
Scott, one question that some people ask is, they're basically like, hey, Kristen Bell and these producers, they have money. Why don't they just pay for it themselves if they wanted to make it so bad? What do you think about that question?
Well, do they have money? I don't know how much money Kristen Bell has.
Right.
You're always hearing about these celebrities who go bankrupt and everything. But also, I don't think that's really how it's done. So what if they put their money up and then they lose everything? $2 million could be an awful lot of money to Kristen Bell, right? She's not Angelina Jolie or someone like that.
Right.
But I think the thing about this is, it's sort of representing this new age of how we as consumers of content pick and choose what we want. And just like you can go and download anything from iTunes that you want and not necessarily just watch ABC's block of programming on a Tuesday night, we're kind of choosing that we want a Veronica Mars here. Oh, I'll throw $20 at it, or I'm a huge Veronica Mars fan. I'm going to throw $10,000 at it. We're kind of helping to pay for it, just in the way that we would pay for it by buying a ticket to go see it. So, whereas I think my first reaction to this was sort of a reflexive, can't this be done in more traditional ways? The more I thought about it, the more it occurred to me that it is the fans just kind of ultimately paying for the content that they want to see.
Yeah, I keep thinking, if you were super cynical or super conspiracy theorist, do you believe they would have made this movie no matter what, and this was all kind of a ruse? I don't think so. I mean, unless Kristen Bell, Rob Thomas, and Warner Brothers are blatantly lying to us, the movie wouldn't have happened without this, And so that's the question, as a fan, and of course the people putting money in are fans, they wouldn't do it otherwise, is it worth it to you to say, yeah, I contributed maybe $10, maybe $10,000, it's up to you to get this thing happening. Roth, do you think, we would have seen a Veronica Mars movie if this hadn't happened?
I really don't, because certainly Rob Thomas and Kristen Bell have been pushing for this to happen for several years now. They struggled to keep Veronica Mars on the air while it's on the air. I think that what this is a really interesting and important example of, how media is changing. And I think that fans really feel empowered, do you know what I mean, to see a project that they love come to life. And I think that's a great feeling if you really love something, to know that you had something to do with it happening. It just invests you more. So from a marketing perspective, that's brilliant, Second of all, this is not charity. It's pre-sales. You're going to get things as a result of how much money you contributed. And they're actually pretty cool packages. They're like the script and a DVD. people are complaining that, oh, Warner Brothers wants you to pay money to go see it in theaters and pay to get it done. But the truth is, you don't have to go see it in theaters because you pay for a certain level. You're automatically getting the DVD. Anyway, you can if you want to support the theatrical release or the digital download, but you don't have to. You know, I really feel like there is no downside to this. If independent filmmakers are upset because they're not going to get as rapid a response, well, that's just, I understand that, and I love independent film, but the reality is Kristen Bell is famous, and as to how much money she has, I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but I did a little bit of digging, and it said her net worth was somewhere like $8 million, which is a ton of money, don't get me wrong. I would take that any day, but to risk, like a huge percentage of that on this film is probably not something most people would do. Now, Joss Whedon funds his own projects all the time, sure, but I also think, again, that this acts as a marketing tool for the project, even as much as it acts as a fundraiser.
Plus, how much is Dax Shepard worth? That's what I want to know.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like people are saying like, well, yeah, they don't want to risk their money, so they're asking for the fans' money. But again, it's a big difference between saying, hey, can you put in whatever you want, which could be $5 if you want, versus I'm going to put in $50,000, $500,000, however much you think that Kristen Bell should have put in. I mean, it's very different. It's just saying as a fan, I want to put this in. And yeah, I like what you said, Roth, about the whole paying for it thing. I mean, it's going to get a limited theatrical run too. It's not going to be playing across the country. So if you're spending $35, I think gets you like it gets you like the DVD and the script and all this stuff. It's a pretty good deal. I mean, you'd spend that on a Blu-ray anyway.
Yeah.
So and obviously, again, these are fans. They're not going up to people on the street and making them give money.
Although, don't you think in this case that it was more than just the fans, because it did gain this sort of momentum yesterday of it becoming a Twitter phenomenon, a social networking phenomenon where people were just maybe donating to be part of it?
I think a very small percentage. I think all that happens because, again, let's face facts. Veronica Mars has a small fan base, relatively speaking, but Twitter does allow a fan base like that to mobilize very quickly. So I think you might have had a few people. I bet you did have some people who were in the industry who wanted to see it succeed, who might never have watched Veronica Mars. Who kicked in some money. But Scott, I wanted to ask you about that. There was a lot of people on Twitter yesterday, people like Sean Ryan, who wants to do who's even in the past said, maybe we could do a Kickstarter to do a Terriers TV movie wrap-up, who was like, I want to watch what happens with this Veronica Mars thing. Do you think this will set a precedent with other properties like that again, are studio-owned, but the studio clearly is not going to do anything with it? Do you think we'll start seeing more of that and the possibility of some of these cult series getting revived as a result?
Well, I guess hopefully. I think in this case it's sort of unique because there was an agreement with Warner Brothers, correct me if I'm wrong, that as long as they hit the $2 million mark, that then Warner Brothers would pay for the marketing and limited release, right? So to do that with, say, a Babylon 5, maybe, which is something that's been often rumored to be getting a revival, and it never quite happens, and it has a fan base. You can't just raise the $2 million. You need more than $2 million, which is it's not a heck of a lot of money ultimately, right? To release a film. So I think we will see more of it. I don't know how much more we'll see because there is more to the picture than just Kickstarter, right? I mean, you do have to have some kind of assist from the studio, and because ultimately most of these properties are owned by the studio or the big conglomerate or what have you. Some people were saying, actually, wouldn't it have been more interesting if they had raised enough money to buy the rights to Veronica Mars back? Right.
And then
they wouldn't have any money. Then they wouldn't have any money to make the movie, though. So.
Right. And you get the feeling.
And also,
I was just going to say, you get the feeling that the studio wouldn't do that because they would want to say, well, we still want those DVD rights,
Of course, yeah.
What were you going to say, Roth?
Yeah. I was going to say, you know, and also you do, to your point, Scott, the truth is, and I think the reality is that I feel like these combinations of the independent and the studio-born projects like this opens up a lot of interesting possibilities, because you do need the marketing arm that Warner Brothers has. You do need the distribution. You do need that in order to really, for them to just buy back the rights and then try and get the money to make the film would be such a waste of time if they had a deal in place with Warner Brothers. And I think that people say, oh, it's this big subterfuge on the studio's part. I just don't see it that way. I just see them as going, yeah, you have this little fan base, but who cares? Fine, if you can get $2 million, we'll do X, Y, and Z. You know, Veronica Mars also is, to your other point, an unusual property in that it can be made for a smaller amount of money. They're going to make a lot more than $2 million, by the way, on Kickstarter. But it can be made for a smaller amount of money than the whole season of Babylon 5 or a whole new season of Firefly, which, believe me, we all want that. But it'd be a lot more expensive to do.
Right. Last question I'll ask you both, starting with Scott. Does this, you know, again, some of the hyperbole, some of the very upset people yesterday said it kind of ruined Kickstarter. There was almost the, like, Kickstarter's been sold out sort of idea because it, you know, Kickstarter was started, they'd say, for the little guy. Does this sort of take away the power of those littler properties on Kickstarter, or do you think both can coexist?
Yeah, I think they can coexist for sure. If anything, it probably does more for Kickstarter projects, because a lot of people who never knew what it was before probably heard of it because of this. Mm-hmm. So I would say not at all. I think there's plenty of room for small-scale projects and big things like this. I hope there is.
Mm-hmm. Roth?
I do. I know, you know, a friend of mine actually just had a really successful Kickstarter campaign. Two friends of mine had two successful Kickstarter campaigns, actually. One for a documentary called Showrunners, and one that's on the Tim Burton Superman movie that never was documentary, John Schnepp. And neither one of them are famous. I mean, Schnepp, you know, he does Metalocalypse, and I can never say it. I always end up saying Metalocalypse. And certainly other properties, but he's not famous and he's not wealthy. And it was a hugely successful campaign for him. He got the money. They're going to make their documentaries. I think there's room for everyone. I think that with Veronica Mars, it's different in that it's not like Marvel's coming and say, hey, guys, can you help us fund Ant-Man? To which we would be like, no. You know,
what?
You have plenty of money.
I'd be like, hell yes.
Not because we don't want to see Ant-Man, but because they have plenty of money to fund it themselves. Veronica Mars wasn't going to get made without this. I truly believe that.
Yeah. I think it's the natural progression of so many different things where, yeah, you know, it's going to get noticed by some of the bigger people and they'll start using it. But, yeah, everyone will still have their own opportunity. And I think you're right, Scott. Some people never heard of Kickstarter until yesterday, I bet. And now they can use it. That's it for now, guys. There'll be plenty more news about the Veronica Mars movie to come. I'm guessing if you tune into IGN coming up, you're going to be seeing more news about other Kickstarter projects, too. So keep coming back, and we'll have more to tell you soon. Thanks a lot.
Babylon 5.